Hello, everyone. This is Kristina Mandlakiani, co-founder of Mindvalley, and welcome to Mindvalley Book Club interviews. And today is a very special day because I have not one guest, not even two, but three. Well, that sounds a little bit marketing, but it is very special day. And I'm going to introduce my guests, maybe not as detailed introduction as sometimes when we have one guest, but I think the important thing about my guests is that the three of them have, on one side, very unique stories, but then there are commonalities between my three guests. Now I want to introduce my guests. So I'll introduce my guests in order of them appearing in this room. So it's Kate Swenson. Hi, Kate.
Hi, hello.
Carrie Cariello. Hi, Carrie.
Hello, good morning.
And Adrian Wood. Hi, Adrian.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning to you. It's good afternoon to us in Europe and good evening to
Oh,
those of you who listen to us from, say, India or maybe Australia and or Asia. So, hello, everyone. And the three guests of mine are the authors of this very engaging book, but not just that, Autism Out Loud. And what connects my three guests is that they're mothers, all three of them are mothers, and between the three of them, they have 13 kids, right? Am I right?
Yes.
13 kids, and three kids with autism diagnosis, and that's pretty much, well, obviously it's Autism Out Loud, that's what we are talking about, but of course, with that said, their stories are also unique and well, every story is individual and a little bit different, and we'll be diving into them and talking about them. But in addition to that, they're also the New York Times best-selling authors. Congratulations for that. And
thank you.
being the host of Mindvalley Book Club and knowing this industry, well, personal growth industry, it is a huge accomplishment, and I really I'm happy for you because it's such a good recognition, considering the topic of the book. I think it's very significant. I'm happy this happened, so congratulations. And of course, all three of my guests have their lives in addition to their motherhood and the motherhood of the boys who have autism. All three kids who have autism here in this group are boys. Well, all four, in fact, if I had my own. but um, but we'll talk about the book mostly. I just wanted to acknowledge that, and I know that a few of you have also pretty big platforms on social media where you advocate for this cause. So I guess the commonalities that I'm trying to talk about is that you're women, you're mothers, you have boys with a diagnosis, you are also advocates and writers and best-selling authors. So quite a lot of commonalities. If you want to add something else, now's the time.
Thank you, Kristina. That is a great introduction. And even now, when I hear the phrase New York Times bestselling author, I don't know about Kate and Adrian, like it still takes me back a moment. Like I still have to absorb it that we, for 2 weeks, landed on, the biggest book list globally. And just the fact that you in Europe, can connect to how important that is. But secondly, how important it is that a book about autism, about a disability landed in such top level material. I think it's very gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
So, congratulations once again. And I want to, since this is a book club, we usually focus on the books. And the one promise that I make is that I read the books that the books that I highlight. So in addition to New York Times bestseller, which is a huge accomplishment, I want to say that you're also the Mindvalley Book Club Book of the Week, which is maybe not as known yet, but is also, well, for us a big deal because we go through all the new releases in self-help and personal growth every single week, and we know how many books are out there. And for us to pick a book, all our pro readers have to feel the same about it. So this book came onto my desk also with huge recommendations, and I spent this week reading it. And I have to say, for those of you guests who haven't read it yet, we do encourage you guys to read the book before the interview. I do recommend it. Of course, it's going to suck you in. You will not notice what's happening around you. You will just read the book until it's done. So it is very engaging, which is, of course, how to say, I would say, I don't want to say that it's expected, but it is natural in a way, because you are so openly sharing the stories, personal stories, and it is so endearing to just get to know you and also want to understand, so what's going to happen next. So very, very, I would say unusual book, considering that I read books every week, because it is very personal and very sincere, so or intimate, I would even say. So you do feel like you spending time with these three beautiful families. That's the short intro. But to you ladies, because we didn't come here to listen to me, the first question that I want to ask is, what compelled you to sit and write the book? Because I know parenthood, especially if you have 13 kids between you, takes up probably majority of your time. Plus, you do already have platforms where you speak out. But why a book? What was the motive to actually try this endeavor?
I can start. Kate here. So we've all been sharing for quite some years on social media. And while that's a wonderful place to share your story, what I think is hard is people just get a snippet of what's going on. So they may pop into a post about autism that's about aggression, or they may pop into a post about Jack going to college, or, Amos taking a flight successfully on an airplane. And people get an idea of what autism is based on that one snippet of information. So one of my reasonings is I wanted people to read our stories from start to now and know that it's not one thing. It's highs and lows and challenges and huge victories, and that you can, and then also on that same part, that autism can look very differently. All three of our boys have very different autistic profiles. So it's while it comes across, I think, as self-help memoir, it's so educational too.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that, because as I was reading it, I was actually trying to look at it from the point of view of just a parent, any parents for that matter. Of course, in my case, I was curious because Mindvalley audience knows my son also has a diagnosis, although he is he's highly functional, so it doesn't take a huge toll on me. But what I want to add that, yes, there is, although it talks about autism, there's this beautiful quote I noted for myself about how parenthood is sometimes not what you expect, and how it is, it's about the journey, how you adjust your expectations probably, or how you adjust your view of the world, despite the fact that maybe what you got wasn't what you were bargaining for.
Yeah, I was just talking to some friends of mine, and I said, I don't know one mother, diagnosis notwithstanding, who said this is exactly what I expected. And I'm doing amazing. I don't know one mother that's ever said that. So I think you made a great point, Kristina. You could read this book whether you have a diagnosis in your family or not. I think there's a lot of people that can see a piece of themselves inside each of our stories.
And the siblings too.
The siblings is a huge piece of it. I'm struck again and again by how many people send me pictures of the other kids in their house holding the book and devouring the book.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a experience recently. I think I had shared it with Kate. Amos had his appointment with his pediatric psychiatrist, which is chapter 4. We talk a lot about anxiety, and all three of our families have navigated using medicine for our sons, which is kind of a hard thing to talk about, right? Because you always feel like there's a little bit of a stigma with medication. But I think we felt like it was really important to share how helpful it had been for us and for our children. And my psychiatrist was like, he's reading the book, and he said, I'm about a third of the way through, and I'm just so appreciative that you're revealing all this, because we're really missing it. As a physician, I can say this is what I think would be helpful, but they don't know, and they're struggling with the feelings you have, and you're willing to just unload your feelings and be truthful, and that is such a help in the space. It's really nice to hear.
I actually really appreciate the chapter on anxiety as well, because I never considered it as such a big part of autism diagnosis, and it's not the same as you say in the book. For those of you who haven't read the book, again, I don't want to take away the attention from autism, because this book is about autism. But if you and I believe that people who are listening to that, probably you do have people in your life who has this diagnosis. In fact, if you do have, and you don't mind, do share somewhere in the comments. And it's not always in the family. I have actually a very close friend whose second son has also severe autism diagnosis. So we have actually quite a few friends. I think these numbers are much higher than we knew before. So do share if you have someone in your life with autism. But other than that, I do want to just once more say that there is so much to learn for parents, whether you have autism in your family or just among your friends. But as a parent, also there are parts which are truly educational. Now, I want to ask the question of my guests. And I know that your journey to getting the diagnosis wasn't very linear. And of course, probably for Kate, sorry, who's is the oldest? I'm sorry, I'm slightly confusing. Carrie,
I'm the oldest and Jack's the oldest. It's an easy way to remember it.
So in your case, that diagnosis came a very long time ago, I guess.
Very long time ago. Almost 20 years ago, he was diagnosed, 2 decades.
Yeah, and things change, of course, in this time. But I know that this journey wasn't linear, and you sometimes had to push through the system, the medical system, the misunderstanding to get to the answer. Yet, with such cases which require professional help, how do you balance actually relying on that professional help versus relying on your motherly instinct and pushing forward where you think that maybe something is not right?
Well, for me, I had 2 boys a year apart. And so that was a really great way for me to say, wow, things are not developing the way they were last year. I had a calendar year to say, okay, but by Easter, Joseph was like playing Itsy Bitsy Spider and all these just really small but tangible markers. And I mean, from the day Jack was born, my husband and I both had kind of our antenna was up. Something just felt off. But yeah, as a really young mom, and autism wasn't a huge part of the conversation, I definitely had to keep pushing back where I could to say there's just something off. And a lot of times the red flags with autism are things you can't quite put your finger on, and they're really hard to capture. Luckily, we were taken seriously pretty early on and got some services. And then Jack was diagnosed pretty young at 18 months old. So we were very lucky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can say something too. So what's interesting is the birth order. We talk about that a lot, and Carrie just hit on that. So Cooper's my firstborn, and I knew right away he wasn't developing typically, but I think that my mind could see it, but my heart wasn't necessarily ready for it. I have 2 best friends that had kids, babies the exact same time. And I'm telling you, from a very young age, you line your babies up on the floor and lay them on those blankets. I had the only one who was crying all the time. I mean, something was going on. And I didn't get a diagnosis for Cooper that early. He could have been diagnosed with autism at 9 months. I'm telling you, it was classic autism, but I was a first-time mom. We lived in a very rural area in northern Minnesota. Our pediatrician was like, wait until age 3. Stop worrying. You're a first-time mom. You're overreacting. But yet I had this child who couldn't go to daycare and who couldn't ride in the car without crying and who was anxious all the time and didn't play and didn't verbalize anything. And so I found out pretty early that I had to push. I almost had to fight for this diagnosis. And it put a lot of stress on my relationships with my husband and my family. And my husband, who's a great dad, said to me one time, he's like, it's like you're fighting for something to be wrong. And I mean, that like broke me, because I was like, I don't want anything to be wrong. I want him to be perfect. But there was something wrong. And I felt like if I didn't get this diagnosis, how do I help him? So just to give a warm hug to the parents that are in that boat, it's so conflicting. It's so hard. Ooh, I don't want to do it again. I mean, I don't know if I could. It's so hard.
It would be interesting. Yeah, and I'll just chime in. I have, Amos is my youngest of 4. And so I had kind of done this for 3 years. And another thing, it's an aside, but I'm the only one that kind of had, had 7 years of typical familyhood, right? Like I had this experience of not having a child with a disability and what life was like and what, it's very different. But when Amos was 10 days old, I knew he was different. And he didn't smile. And I said to the doctor, at the 2-week checkup, he's not smiling. And, they were like, she's nuts, basically, and it was the same kind of thing. I mean, I remember my pediatrician, who's very nice, but he was like, well, my granddaughter, he was comparing Amos to his granddaughter. And I ended up, when he was 10 months old, I said, if you don't make a referral, I'm going to find a new doctor that will. Like and I had been an early interventionist, so I knew about that. But still, we had an early interventionist at 10 months, and we didn't get Amos's diagnosis till he was just after 3. And in fact, I think this is important. I had 2 very well-skilled physicians, a developmental pediatrician and a neurologist, who said he does not have autism. And I would say to a parent, if you've been told that and you still feel like there's something amiss, make sure that somebody does a full evaluation who tells you that, because both these people had not done the appropriate amount of testing. And I didn't know that. So I was like, oh, well, he's not autistic, so we'll move on. Anyway.
Same. Yep.
Did you at any point have the moment of denial when when you found out that your kids were not like other kids?
I never felt denial, but I know my husband did. And I think that can be somewhat of a common theme amongst couples. I always say a mother's grief is sort of out loud. It's colorful. It fills the room. It takes the air. And a father's grief is a more private affair. And that definitely was consistent with my marriage. So my husband Joe was kind of like, no, not yet, not yet. I was actually grateful to get the diagnosis because I finally had a reason to say, okay, that's why he will only play with the vacuum in a room full of people. That's why he's screaming all the time. He completely stopped sleeping. Like sort of all of those characteristics fell into place and they made sense for me.
I'll second that too. I wouldn't say that I had denial because it was very obvious. I felt relief instantly when they said it was autism, not because it was autism. That I was terrified of that. I can say that, but I felt like they were going to tell me what to do. And I know I hear from a lot of mothers that say the same thing. Like I was at this table and they're like, it's level 3 severe nonverbal autism, which is terrifying to hear about a 3-year-old. But I thought that then it was going to follow up with like, here's your list of things to do and he'll be fine. But they were like, bye, good luck. And, that is terrifying. But I also want to just touch on what Carrie said too. Jamie, I'm telling you, and Cooper was nonverbal, still is nonverbal. And I'm telling you, for years, he was like, once he starts talking, I bet it won't be autism anymore. Like once he starts talking, and he would like hold on to that. It was like this like little piece of like something. And I mean, I would get to the point where I'm like, get over it. Like that's not going to fix this, but it was hard. It was just hard.
Yeah. And I didn't have denial either, though I think it's interesting that none of us did, because it's sort of telling, right, that we're all 3 sharing our stories, that those 2 things maybe don't mesh together, right? Somebody in denial is probably not going to just blab it out to the world. I felt a tremendous amount of sadness. I mean, I was so low when I heard that. I think in a way I thought we were going to get something really, like maybe Kate said, that we could fix. Amos he has a genetic disorder as well that was kind of recently diagnosed called MSL2. And so he had some anatomical like differences. And I was expecting that. But the autism just seemed so obvious. And I think I felt dumb for not. Yeah. It never entered my sphere that was a possibility. And it should have, but it didn't. Anyway.
Well, and doing what we do, we talk to a lot of moms, and I'll hear all the time parents that were in denial, where they're like, it was so shocking. And then I try to dig in a little bit, and it's like, well, was it shocking at age 2, or was it shocking? Did they get a diagnosis at 20? Because I suppose that would be shocking. But I mean, so that's hard for me. And then I was like, I try to like gently say like, well, now looking back, were the signs there? And, people get real prickly about that question. They're like, no. Mm-mm. And I'm like, I can admit, like, I don't know. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah, and I run into parents still to this day who will say, I don't want the diagnosis. I don't want that to follow him or her for the rest of their lives. And my mind, I'm thinking there will be a label that will follow them. It will be rude, greedy, just thinking of my own son Jack's behaviors when he was younger, abrupt, harsh. They're going to get labeled. I preferred a diagnostic label that could get him services. And I want to circle back to like whether or not I was in denial. Definitely wasn't in denial, but Joe and I, again, I knew no one whose family looked like mine. I knew no one raising anybody with a diagnosis. We did think he would outgrow it. So we were sort of in the Jamie camp, like, well, once we get some speech and we get the ball rolling, this will all be behind us. And hence why we just kept having children. Yeah, very naive.
I'm actually not going to ask you about the other children much, although I think it's a very good topic to talk about the siblings as well. I think one thing we have to maybe speak out loud right now, that it's not a disease to be cured. I think a lot of people think that this is something you can fix, if you eat well and whatnot. That in mind, why I'm bringing this up, because this is something which rubs me the wrong way every time I get in touch with people when they start talking about autism. As I was flying yesterday from London, I was watching a movie, which was a beautiful movie, and it had a kid with autism, actually non-verbal autism, which should be apparently a very severe case. But the way the popular culture right now presents this diagnosis is very often a little bit maybe strange. So that leads me up to the question, is there something you would want the world to understand and to know about autism that right now we're just not getting?
Well, I talk a lot about how, as much as I want to be positive about my son and his journey and his triumphs, autism at the end of the day is not a gift. And that's kind of the popular narrative, like autism is a gift, it's a gift. It is a disability. By the Center for Disease Control classifies it as a disability. My son is the gift, how he is the most determined, sometimes to his, detriment, determined, tenacious person that I know. He is a gift of it, and we have certainly benefited as a family from shifting our lens. But autism is a disability. You would never tell someone, in a wheelchair that the fact that they can't walk is their gift. So it's an invisible disability, and I think that gets in people's way a lot.
For me, I think that and I've really made this my mission, it's supporting those who care for kids with disabilities. The caregivers is a term that I've been using a lot now. Can a parent be a caregiver? Well, when Cooper was 2 and 3, I'd say no. But now that he's 14 and he's as tall as me and he has big feet and I'm still doing, dressing, bathing, feeding, making meds, we have to support families. And I think by sharing our stories with dignity, the good and the beautiful and the hard and the challenging and the sad, by just starting conversations, we can do that because, our family, we struggle a lot. This is really hard. And people get really uncomfortable. I was just talking to Adrian about this the other day. Cooper will need lifelong care. There's no way he will not need lifelong care. I'm comfortable saying that. It makes me sad and scared, but I'm comfortable saying that. And whenever I say that, someone's like, don't give up hope. You don't know the future. And it's like, but I know this part. Yeah. And it's okay to say that. I just think that this is hard sometimes. We don't need to put a bow on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are uncomfortable with hard things. There's always somebody in your family that everything, it's called toxic positivity, right? Like everything's wonderful, everything's good. And that really undermines truth and collecting your thoughts. This summer I've spent a lot of time with my oldest son who's 19, and we've had some really nice conversations about Amos and his care when he's older and where he might live. And, we still don't know, but I'm just talking about it so that I can I think some people think, well, I'll just wait till I'm ready to do it. Well, it's kind of like forgiveness. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. So for me, it's talking about where's the best place for Amos, talking to other families who are doing different types of things and, making those decisions. It's a big one. It's a big one.
But also if something happens to you, I mean, that's the part of the conversation no one wants to have.
Yeah.
What if something happens to me in a couple years? Do I want to leave the decisions for Cooper's life, like my most precious gift, up to his siblings or up to someone? It's like, I think we have to start looking, and that's how we find the best answer. But it's hard at first. It's uncomfortable, isn't it, Adrienne, to talk about it? Like oh my, it hurts.
Well, I think I said to Kate, and I know she knows, but she said, well, Cooper will always live with us. And I probably said the only way that a mother can of a child with a disability, but, well, you're not going to be alive forever. That's not a possibility, and you hear families really say that a lot. And I think the other thing I would say to somebody that says, well, he's going to live with us and then a sibling, but like, I want Amos, you see Jack and what he's doing, and Amos might not be able to do things like Jack, but I want Amos to have his own life that's full. I don't want him to be a tag along of the Wood family, like he's like, Amos go to the movie all by himself, like he's like, in his way, he wants to, order the McDonald's by himself. Like you can see him wanting independence too. So how do we make that happen? Anyway.
Yeah.
But it's not, of course, the future for every kid with this diagnosis, unfortunately, the independence and the ability to actually function independently in the world. I want to thank you, ladies, for this very honest answer, because it's not something that you hear a lot. And I just wanted to repeat something what Carrie said in the very beginning, that autism is not a gift. The child may be a gift for you in your life, but autism is a disability. I want to turn maybe the question around now and ask, what would you wish people knew how to, let me rephrase. What would be the one thing that a mother of a child with autism would love to hear from people around her? Or what would be the helpful thing?
Well, I talk a lot about that, especially in connection to the book, because as we said, Jack was diagnosed 20 years ago. All I wanted was like the old mom, the mom that was 5-10 years ahead of me on the journey, who could talk about puberty, who could talk about life as a young adult, all those things that were really hazy for me in my future. And so I always come back to something that we talk a lot about in the book, that it's going to be okay. It's going to be messy. It will be, chaotic at times. You will be very uncertain. But at the end of the day, I just want people behind us in this journey to know that it is going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. I want to know what success can look like for a person like Cooper. And so when we first heard severe and nonverbal, terrified. There were years where it was just terrifying. And I could not find any success stories. I know they were out there. I hope they were out there, but no one was sharing them. So now when I come across, and I've really immersed myself in the world of disability as much as I can. So we do adaptive sports and adaptive programs. Cooper hates sports, but he loves the donut after. He'll even bat twice for 2 donuts. Parenting pro tip. But the reason I do it is to see the other families. And I've met a 26-year-old young lady like Cooper who's nonverbal, who's working, and she's taking transportation and with help, of course. And I've met parents who have different housing situations. One has a duplex where she lives on one side and her son lives on the other side, and his care is handled by college kids who live rent-free. And I need to know stories. I need to know, not textbook, not clinical. I want to know about people that are doing it. And the reason I'm gently encouraging you to do that is because sometimes you may think your story is not worth sharing. Like, I have sat at many a hockey games and baseball games with my other kids and the families, and they're talking about gold medals and things. And it's like, well, I can bring Cooper up. I can mention that Cooper did this, but I don't always feel comfortable. So just gently share your story, please. We need it.
Boy, Kate, I love that. I could lay here and cry, because it really is. It's true, because I think I end up and Carrie, I don't know if it's like, I think of you with, we both have all these teenagers, and teenagers are, one's finished his first year in college. He's getting ready to fly to Spain to run with the Bulls. Like, they're all doing these, exciting things. And it's like, well, Amos and I are working on staying on the beach for an hour,
Mm.
and I probably don't, I need to talk about that and celebrate him in a way in those conversations, because I think sometimes I just default to my other children because I have something to share. I would say if I wanted people to know something, it was to talk to me and introduce yourself. And I take Amos nearly every day to a little pool club, and I'm the mom, in the pool. He makes me sit in this like worn out baby float, and I have a squirter, and I'm like, well, I'm, doing this, squirting him, and, roaring, and all the other people are either, playing mahjong or they're treading water for exercise. And I think over the last couple weeks, like, they smile at me, and I'm talking, and I feel so much more comfortable, and I'm initiating the conversations. But I hope that they realize, like, we need to be acknowledged and seen. Like, don't just be like, oh, that's hard for her, that's sad.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
I can have a sense of humor too, and it's funny. I mean, darn, it's funny. So talk to us.
Yeah.
I always say you can feel isolated in a public place, and you just touched on that perfectly. It's like people like they like back away from us. Like if Cooper's splashing and having fun, and it's like I could say so many times, splash him back. He loves to splash. He's not made of glass. Splash him.
Like, yeah, they're like, don't jump on him. I'm like, oh no, he prefers people to try to drown him at all times.
I know. Same with Cooper. But they don't. Yeah.
So I'll ask, maybe I'll actually ask all three of you, because you have a little bit different approach to a lot of questions, and I think this is the best part about this interview. So how do you redefine success for your disabled kids? What is success for you? And how did you learn to do that?
Well, I would say it's still a process. And Adrian made a great point. I have other kids who are just moving in very different directions. And especially my oldest, you can't help but compare every once in a while. My oldest son is studying finance. He has a job already coming out of college. And Jack is in a wonderful space, but he will, to some degree, always need support within his community. He didn't, when he moved to his program, he didn't leave his autism behind here at home. He packed it right up and brought it with him. And so he's in this great space and really exploring the world on his terms. But I think it's sometimes hard to be like, okay, he won't really have a career. He'll likely never have a family of his own, drive a car. My husband Joe is like Jamie, like we'll get him to drive. And I'm thinking, real? I don't think so. I don't think Jack's ever going to drive a vehicle. I also say, people tell us, keep hoping, keep hoping. I believe hope is fluid. It's movable. Sometimes you move it from one space to another to make room for something else to fill the spot. And so we just start to hope for different things. But at the end of the day, I always say a life lived differently is not a life less lived.
Mm-hmm. Defining success, I'll say maybe the uncomfortable thing. I had to crash and burn. I had to grieve the life that I thought we were going to have. I mean, I held him in my arms just like every other mother. And I remember looking down at him thinking his dad was a college baseball player. I'm like, the baseball we're going to play, I'm going to chase after your bike, and the play dates and camping trips and boating. And I remember, not one of those things has happened. And I really had to just sit in my feelings and grieve them. And it was ugly and uncomfortable. But now it gave me this gift that I get to celebrate the successes he does have. And I'll tell you, it's fun when he learns to buckle his seatbelt and put on his shoes. And, he's putting his socks on now, but they're upside down. You may not think that's possible. It is. It's really quite hard to do. And okay, he is going to the dentist today. And this is going to, I'm telling you, it's right after this is going to be bad. Last night I was talking about it, and he used his speech device and he said scared, and then dentist. He was listening. I mean, what a success. I was like, Cooper, I mean, that's huge. And I get to pick out these moments and celebrate when they happen. And before I give it to Adrian, I just want to tell you a story. There's this adult sibling I know. Her name is Amanda, and her brother has a rare chromosomal disorder and probably would be autism if it was diagnosed now. He's in his mid 40s. And she shared this story that her mom and dad wrote the will and their plans for the future. And I'm going to just like tear up. One of the lines in it is, above all, factor in his happiness first. And like, the brother doesn't want to work. He just wants to live his life and play video games and be happy. And I think that has stuck in my mind. Above all, happiness first. It's so powerful when you think about it. They put it in the will.
Wow.
Like, don't force him into something he doesn't want to do.
I've just written it down.
I wrote it down too because it just came into my memory. Like, above all, happiness.
Yeah. I think the success thing, and this is, I'm known for humor, but I had these 3 typical children, and I really thought I was sort of an amazing mother. I mean, I was like, look at what I've done. You know, I have these children and they're doing so well, and look, I'm so good. And then Amos came along, and, you know, at 2, the police brought him home because he had escaped from our yard and walked, you know, a block to the drugstore. And I was like, holy cow, like, I'm not so good anymore. And then I had to step back and say, well, maybe it was never about me anyway. Maybe it was about who I got. And I kind of envisioned this unexpected 4th child to be the rough and tumble child, keeping up with their siblings. You know, I had a very clear picture of what my family was going to look like. And I remember when Amos used a spoon for the first time, he was about probably 3 or 4. And my older son, who was 9 or 10, cried with joy. And that was very pivotal for, holy cow, I didn't know success could look like this. You know, I was raised of, you get an education, this is what you do, this is what success looks like. And I didn't know there was another path. And I'm so grateful. Carrie said, you know, how you shift the lens. I do think in our family that then applies to the other children of, you notice success in a different way. It doesn't always have to be great big, you know, which is nice.
You know, your answers give me goosebumps, and I want to give a little warning to the people who are thinking of reading this book. You will shed tears. It's going to happen. And to you ladies, I want to say that, you know, as I'm listening to you, I'm realizing that you have achieved some kind of very different or more profound type of wisdom in parenting department. So do you think, and I know we have to actually soon be finishing this conversation, but would you agree that having the kids who you didn't expect when you were delivering them have been amazing teachers for you as parents?
Yeah, the best. Hands down. I've learned more from Cooper than I have, and how people react to Cooper and about people, than anything else in my life.
Oh yeah, he's enriched our lives for sure. And he's, you know, he's this great, Jack is this great big 6'5", 15 shoe guy. Every day we learn something new. He keeps our group chat very alive and well. And I just, you know, I kind of marvel at where he's going.
And yeah, when you say that Adrian, that the siblings too, my son Sawyer's 12. He knows more about life in so many ways than some adults. Yes. I'm serious. Like he went into the bathroom with Cooper the other day. We were at this camp and just did it. He went in with them and he came out and he whispered in my ear and he's like, it was messy. And I'm like, oh, do you need me to help you? He's like, no, I helped him. We washed his hands and stuff. And it was so like, he didn't even like say like, and give me $20. Like, yeah. Just like, it wasn't like weird. You know what I'm saying? Sorry.
That's funny you say that. I think I told you, Kate, let me add to the poop story, but Amos, every couple of weeks we'll have a problem. And he came up with no pants on and was like, you need to get in the shower. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, where are your pants? And I said to Thomas, are his pants down here? And I didn't hear anything. And I said, what are you doing? He was like, oh, I'm just cleaning up poop. You know, and he wasn't going to say anything. He wasn't going to say, Mom, you need to get down here. You know, it was like, and yesterday I was talking about on a video, and I said, you know, a lot of times in families, you see strife over wills and who gets what. And I said, I think Amos is always going to be, there's no time for that. You know, like they have something important to bring them together, you know, that's far more important than houses or money or jewelry or whatever. And I'm so thankful for that and the perspective, you know, because that's such a lesson in life to learn.
Oh, that's so true. I'm gonna write that down.
You honestly, you could teach. I mean, the level of parenting and the wisdom in your words is just really remarkable. I would like to actually continue this conversation, and we could cover so many topics. Of course, the family of the child with autism is another very interesting and engaging topic. The siblings, the burden that they are inheriting. And you know, the expectations that maybe some parents would have on their siblings. However, I've seen there were some questions.
Yes, it is difficult for dads too. I've noticed that a lot of the times the dads aren't so open to talk about their grief, but I know there are some dad bloggers on social media. Yeah.
It was a comment. But talking about grief and shame, how often do you think people in whose families this happened have to face shame?
A lot. I mean, I know for us, our one of our lowest moments was in middle school when Jack's behaviors really escalated. And I remember walking in almost, I mean, I would say 3 times a week to pick him up at school and past the carpool line. And I knew he was out of control in there. And I felt such a sense of shame. And it took for me to really understand that, like, this is important, I think, that when you're raising a kid with a diagnosis and behaviors, it is not a reflection of your moral compass. It doesn't mean you did something wrong, you're a bad mother, you're a weird family. You have to separate that out because it simply isn't a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm. I'll say we're reaching the age, Cooper's 14, and he does not understand social norms at all. And I don't know if that will come. So, I mean, he's made some progress, like with keeping clothes on and stuff, whoop, whoop. But like we may have fingers in noses or fingers in privates, or the one that I always tell is like Cooper will like sit down in an elevator. That makes people uncomfortable. Or like, you know how when you walk down a hallway that's crowded, you instinctually move to the right. He goes right down the center, and then people like separate and they're like, oh, you know, and I feel like I'm like right there. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. And, you know, like a dancing clown, well, you know, softening the world to him. But we have a lot of moments, and I think I probably it appears that I handle it the best because I do it the most. Another one, just before I pass it on, is we spend a lot of time on the lake, and if you are on the water, you know that things echo. Cooper screams. He's a screamer. And when you're standing on a dock and he's screaming, it's like, that's one of my husband's trigger points. It makes him just like melt down. I don't know the right way to handle it yet. I don't know. I sometimes get defensive or angry, but it's hard. Autism can be embarrassing at times, and it's hard.
I try to really keep a sense of humor. I think it was harder when it was harder on my other children, you know, and to some degree it still is, but in other ways they're like, well, why can't we? I've noticed like church is a real problem for me. Just because it's so quiet, you know, and Amos doesn't want to sit with you. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, something's going to fly over the balcony, you know, anyway, but I feel like I just try to laugh. Today, I have braces, so I have to go to the orthodontist, and Amos has to go with me. And I was already thinking, like, should I send an Instagram message and like say like, Amos and I are going to be at the orthodontist but my orthodontist has an older brother with special needs. And that's like makes me feel like it's okay, right? Because I know that. And then if we're not out in public sitting in the elevators, then how does anybody ever learn to be kind if they don't have access to us? You know, so it's this like push and pull of what's best for us, but what's best for the world, and is teaching the world actually what's best for us. You know? So
I had
tricky.
to bring Cooper to the orthodontist, and I've never brought him there before. I had to get my Invisalign done, and I was terrified. Like, I mean, it was like, I am telling you, I was sweating buckets. I bought copies of my book and gave them to the receptionist. I
That's
am
a good
telling
idea.
you,
Oh, I'm going to take a bunch. I'm so
I
glad.
was like, we're going to spread some autism awareness up in here. And I made a joke, and I was like, are you able to like do the alignment in the lobby so Cooper can sit next to me? And they're like, no, we need you to come back to the chair. But this is the funny part. And you have to laugh. I'm a big fan of laughing too. So I had Cooper sitting right in front of me. So I'm on the chair, still sitting up. He's right in front of me. And there was a blinds behind him, which are a big trigger. Ding, 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 ding. Pull the blinds. There was a file cabinet with a vase. And so she laid me back, and he like touched the blinds. I'm like, whoop, 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 whoop. And I popped up and like opened the blinds. So then she went to lay me back again, and he started hitting the file cabinet. And I was like, could I move this file cabinet? I was like, I moved it. He sat there the whole time, you guys. I thought we climbed Mount Everest. I was like, look at us nailing autism. But I mean, I was dying of sweat.
I like that you moved the file cabinet. We have a real penchant for lights, like the lights that move. I mean, you might as well say, like, come get on my spaceship. I mean, lights, we're turning them on. And then, heaven forbid, if people say we go to one doctor and they're always like, don't touch the lights. And I'm like,
oh, don't even get me started on lights.
Take the frickin' light out of the room.
Cooper's 14, and I still have to have my back against the light. And he spends his whole time trying to turn the light off. And at his last appointment, the doctor's like, ha ha ha, my computer screen lights up. Nice try. We did the appointment in the dark.
I have seen Kate not be shameful in a way that made me laugh. We were in a hot tub together. Carrie was there too, somewhere. And Kate was in this hot tub, and she had at least 3 of her children in there. And there was another family kind of in the corner. And Cooper was like,
he wanted to sit on their lap.
He wanted to get close to them. And Kate didn't say anything, but she was like kind of being like a running back. I don't know or defensive tackle. Like she was like keeping him aside. I was like, this is really pretty incredible. And it's very hot in here.
He's always sweating. Why is it so hot?
A lot of sweating.
Thank you for taking it with this much humor. I can see that there is actually a lot of comments coming in, and I know that this conversation is very interesting. It's needed. I want to remind people who are listening to that, either online or in live right now with us. This is the book. Masha is going to share the link to the book. You're now best-selling authors. You can actually go around giving out the books to whoever you like. It's New York Times bestseller. It's an honor. So, I want to ask my traditional last question of my guests, but meanwhile, I also have a traditional request to our audience to leave a heart for my guests, and leave a heart under the video if you're watching it in recording, because love does matter. Now, the question that I want to ask the wonderful New York Times bestselling authors is, how would you like this book to change the world?
Oh, that's a great question. I would like autism to just continue to be a part of the conversation. Kids like ours have a place in the world. They matter. I'd like it to just be something that is a more accepted kind of thing. And I want to mention also, Kristina, that if people enjoyed this live, we read the audio in our own voices. So people who take in books with audio, you can hear the 3 of us tell our stories.
I think when it comes to changing the world, I think give this book to your neighbor who may be a little judgmental, or, who I hear a lot of, grandpas. And I am in no way, because I love grandpas. Grandpas are fantastic. But sometimes grandpas may say things like, just a little bit more discipline, or this, or just he'll eat when he's hungry. And I'm not picking on grandpas, but I sort of am. I hear a lot, and probably the most powerful feedback ever was like, my dad read this book and now he understands. I mean, oh my gosh, that we could just like bring a family closer together. That's it.
Yeah, I think I just want people to have access to it. I want to be able to go in a doctor's appointment and not worry about touching the freaking light, or go in the grocery store and not have the police called on us. I just want to be able to live out loud in a way that feels comfortable and not we have so much on our plates that like worrying about the reaction from the world is just unnecessary. You know, like that's one thing we can extinguish. And I think we said to the world, here's our heart, you know, and if you take the time to read it, you're going to understand us better. And my dad was that grandpa. I mean, Kate and Carrie know this, but my dad read the book and said, you know, I just had no idea what life was like. And not like, oh, it's such a sad life, but you know, I remember being at my parents' house and my dad would be like, well, are you going to help cook dinner? And it was like, do you see what I'm doing? Like, this was before Amos could use a remote control. And my son Thomas still says that's like the greatest success in our family is his ability to use the remote control.
I'll
Because
second that.
you had to change, and I'm not talking like a show. I'm talking every, I don't know, 60 seconds on YouTube to find the right clip. You want to talk about sweating. Like, I should be thin. I mean, this would go on for freaking, I like have PTSD, hours of the remote. And he didn't see it, you know, he just saw me like sitting back there with Amos being lazy, you know, so it's like, wow, I didn't know. Give me a little space, you know. Anyway, understand why I order a lot of pizza.
I actually think it's such a great message because yes, we are talking about autism here, which is not as how say there are quite a lot of kids with that who suffer, and a lot of parents who suffer in silence and isolation, who are afraid, maybe don't have anywhere to turn. I know in US the community maybe is a little bit more lively, but I know in Europe sometimes it may be, especially in some parts of the world, it might be very isolating. So it is very important to talk about that. But I also want to for our audience to understand that actually there are so many cases where people are a little different, and if we could be a little bit less judgmental and a little bit more understanding, maybe it would make life easier for a lot of people. So thank you for writing this book. I hope you ladies actually write a book for dads as well, because I think dads are another big segment of our society who has also this in their life, autism in their life, and maybe not enough support, not enough understanding, or granddads for that matter. For all of you who are watching, this is the book. We'll share the link. Buy 2 copies, one for yourself, one for your judgmental neighbor.
Yes.
And I wish you great success, Kate, Carrie, and Adrian. Thank you so much for joining me, and our audience. Thank you, everyone who is watching us live. Thank you for joining us live. I do really appreciate live audience and interaction, even though I don't see your comments, but I can see you and you interact with us. And for those of you who are watching in recording, thank you for being with us all this time. And if you're not part of Mindvalley Book Club, then join, because I have access to the world's best authors. Thank you very much once again, and bye-bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thanks, Kristina.
Thank you.